how a 5-year-old's promise to a grandmother wound up with a device that not only will cure disease, but will save you tax money, will clean up the environment, will provide good government, and benefit women all around the world. So I'm going to share my presentation, and you'll see the name of the little girl named Sherry Grantham. So Sherry was 5 years old, and her grandmother took her with her to visit a nursing home where her relatives were. And Sherry looked around, and she saw a lot of people, and she tugged on her grandma's skirt, and Grandma bent down and said, "Yes, Sherry, what's going on, Sherry?" And Sherry said, "Grandma, how come all these old people are in diapers?" And so Grandma explained about incontinence and the need to wear diapers to absorb the urine. And then Sherry looked up at her grandma and she says, "Grandma, when I grow up, I'm going to do something about this for these old people." Well, it took Sherry about 45 years to realize that dream, and that dream is called Floelle. It's a device that stops the urine leaks that define urinary incontinence, and it restores women's dignity and gives them the freedom to enjoy a life without worrying all the time about leaking. Let's see. So it's really a bigger problem than we think. If we look at the U.S., there are 20 million women in the U.S. that are incontinent, have urinary incontinence. Europe, of course, is a bigger population, so there's 30 million women in Europe. Everybody thinks it's an old lady disease. In fact, if some women go to their general practitioner and tell them they're incontinent, the doctor says, "Well, it's just a natural part of aging." And it is true that the prevalence goes up with age. But if you look at the data, young women, 18 to 44, 25% of them are incontinent. Middle-aged women, 45 to 70, 40% incontinent. Older women, 45% incontinent. If you now extend this to look at the whole world, we have about 500 million incontinent women in the world, which provides a very good market for our product, but more importantly, it provides a great benefit to women. So what is it like to be a woman who is incontinent going through that journey? So she could begin to experience incontinence at any age. There are a few children that are incontinent. Most of them are before, during, and after pregnancy, around menopause, and when they become older. So they're embarrassed to be incontinent. It reminds them of waking up in the middle of the night with wetting the bed, the parents yelling at them and traumatizing them, which they carry with them the rest of their life. So they want to keep it a secret. So they don't talk to the doctor. Instead, they go to the corner drugstore and they buy incontinence pads or liners or tampons or things that go in their vagina to press up against the urethra called pessaries. Even sometimes get special underwear or a combination of these. But finally, the leakage gets too much for all these absorbent products, and then they go see the doctor. And they can be referred for treatment by the gynecologist, the urogynecologist, the family practitioner, the primary care provider. And the first thing that these people do is they do a medical history. Have you leaked urine in the past year? Then they do a diagnostic assessment. So it's a way of measuring urine flow and velocity and pressure called urodynamics. And Sherry trained as a medical assistant and then worked in gynecology offices to work with these women who are incontinent. And finally, she discovered a treatment that I introduced in 2002, which is pelvic floor exercises. And sometimes other companies have electrical stimulators that stimulate the muscle and provide biofeedback. But are these really what women want? Well, they want to stop leaking. And what happens is that every time they cough, they laugh, they sneeze, they lift something like the groceries, a child, they jump, they play sports, they come down from a tennis serve or a volleyball serve, and bam, there's a leak. So the leak is absorbed. However, if some of the urine gets out of the diaper and runs down their leg a little bit, and they get wet thighs, and they rub together while she's walking to cause an infection and then ulcers and then rashes. Very uncomfortable. Women are also embarrassed by the urine odor because even though there are sophisticated anti-odor ingredients in these diapers, they still have an odor. In fact, one woman said that her husband wanted a divorce because he couldn't stand the odor in her diaper. He said, "You smell like a nursing home." And then as they leak more and more, they have to get thicker and thicker absorbent pads. And instead of putting one just in their panties, they wind up wearing what looks like a diaper. They call it an adult brief. And that distorts their clothing. So anybody looking at them could say, "Ooh, she's incontinent." So the result of this embarrassment is that women become socially isolated. They don't want to go to the movies, don't go to a restaurant, they don't go shopping, don't want to go anywhere where there's going to be other people near enough to smell them. And of course, they don't want to get involved in intimate relationships. Furthermore, some of these women also have another condition called urgent incontinence, where they suddenly have a need to go, and they have to find a bathroom in 15 minutes, or they're going to have urine running down their leg. So it leads to immobility. They just can't travel without knowing where all the nearest bathrooms are. And finally, there's the financial side. The over-the-counter products cost $2,300 a year for the pads, $8,600 for a pessary. Not cheap. And elderly incontinent women are also placed in nursing homes, and we'll explain why in a little bit. And those cost the government $150,000 a year. So we're going to show you how we deal with all these problems with a very innovative medical device called Floelle. So the Floelle device is placed in the mid-urethra, and it slides in there just like you would put in a catheter. And all medical people are trained to put in a urinary catheter. It's no big deal. It takes a couple of minutes. And what happens is that when a woman sneezes, she has pressure all through her abdominal cavity, and that presses on her bladder. And the bladder then tries to push urine out. And if the urethra is not tightly closed, then urine leaks out. What the Floelle device does is it's an analog computer. So it sits in the urethra and monitors that pressure all the time. And as soon as it senses the pressure going up, it closes the valve that goes through the middle of it and stops the leaks. So it's a very innovative device that the woman doesn't have to change every day, diapers 10 times a day. And it has an antimicrobial because the bacteria are in the outer third of the female urethra, and they're very curious despite not having a brain. And so they wander around, and anytime they find a device in the urethra, they lay down another biofilm. It's like another vacation home for the bacteria. And in and of itself, that wouldn't be too bad. But when they lay a biofilm down on a medical device, it attracts salts out of the urine to form little spiky things, sort of like mini kidney stones. So the way we deal with that is we mix an antimicrobial into the materials of this very soft silicone rubber device so that they kill bacteria, and even if there's a little bit of wear and tear on the device, it just simply exposes new antimicrobial crystals to take care of the bacteria. So let's see if we can get the slide picture. There we go. So we've been looking at this from the patient's point of view. Let's look at it from the point of view of an investor. What does this really do? Well, first of all, we calculated that if they invest now, then by the time that we exit and sell the company, they'll realize a double-digit return on their investment. It's a very big problem. Again, 25 to 50% of women worldwide will become incontinent. The total addressable market is in the trillions of dollars per year of annual revenue. We talked about the antimicrobial. In fact, it's not a catheter. It doesn't go in the bladder. Doesn't provide a pathway for hospital-acquired infections because it's not in the bladder. It's minimally invasive, stays in the urethra for 4 months, and needs to be changed. So from a business point of view, it provides an annuity revenue stream, 3 changes a year, every year for the rest of the woman's life. And it's done in the doctor's office, so the doctor can do it and the doctor can profit from it. Again, there's no surgery, there's no uncomfortable adhesives or plugs, no rigid tubes, and so it fits a woman's lifestyle. And economically, we can produce it for under $100 in cost of goods, etc., and sell it through distributors for $670. So it has a good profit margin for distributors and for the company. And finally, there are existing CPT codes so that reimbursement is instant. You don't have to apply for reimbursement and wait for it to be approved. It's already there. Our ideas are protected by patents. Now, that little girl who was 5 grew up, went to MA school, became a medical assistant in gynecology practices, and had an idea in 2009, but she didn't have any engineering background. So instead of going to Vivonics, she went to her neighbor in Houston, and he in turn recommended she go to Texas A&M University and have the students who were doing a capstone project do a project on this. And so the result they had was something like this, which is essentially an adaptation of a water snake toy to fit inside the urethra and block it. Unfortunately, it's very complicated to manufacture. So we hired a design house called Bridge Medica, And they designed something much more simple, which is on the right. And again, it took a while for this patent, which was filed in 2013, to be approved in 2020, but eventually it got approved. We also filed the same patent in Japan. That's been approved. And we applied in Europe, and that got approved last December. And then the newer design, it's already approved, but it will actually issue on the end of this month, June 30th. So we're very well protected in terms of intellectual property. Now, what's the data look like? Well, we tried to get animal studies. They call them preclinical. So I went to three different animal research facilities, spoke to 4 different veterinary surgeons, and said, what animal model can you have that has the same size urethra and the same exit as a human? And they said, none. So we had to build the lower urinary tract of an artificial woman and test our devices there. So we were testing to see whether this valve that's inside the device does close and prevent leaks. And on the right is a picture of the pressure in a woman's abdomen. And you can see that it stays fairly steady, and then it spikes up when she coughs. And this is just illustrative, but we set we like it to close and block the leak when it gets to be 150 centimeters of water. But because not every cough is the same, we set the threshold at 100 centimeters of water. And we did a theoretical design with nonlinear mechanical modeling to design the device to close at this pressure. We then made a metal mold, and we made 5 devices. We tested each one 5 times. And the actual data is the valve closes at abdominal pressure of 101 centimeters of water. In other words, 1% different than our theoretical design. So we knew that we could rely on the theoretical design to predict the performance of the device. Well, then we went out and tried to raise money, and everybody that we talked to said, well, we know you need clinical data, but we don't fund that. So we had to find a way of getting clinical data through people that were sympathetic to the woman's plight. And we finally found a hospital here in Massachusetts. Unfortunately, the principal investigator's son dived into a wave and became paraplegic, so she resigned. So we had to move the study closer to Houston and do the rest of the study in a gynecology clinic in Houston. So we do this provocative testing. It's called pad tests. And first we measure urine leakage without the device. So this is a summary of 3 tries of 3 different ways of compressing the abdomen and producing urine leaks. So without the device in the urethra, the leakage is 34 milliliters of urine, but with the device, the leakage was 0. And that difference is statistically significant with a p-value of 0.01. So we concluded that the Floelle device does block unwanted urine leaks. We also asked the women if they could feel the device in place, and they said they don't feel it. The biggest problem we had in our clinical trial is that the device worked so well that at the end of the trial, we asked for the device back, and women said, no, I want to take it home. So we know we have something that works for women if they want. It's just a matter of getting through the rest of the steps so that we can get to market. So as I said before, the business model is a prescription-only device that we sell to doctors for basically resale to patients. It's a disposable device that provides a recurring revenue stream. The pricing we talked about before, the distributors make money, and they make money not on an initial sale, but they make money every 4 months the rest of the patient's life. Now, the value propositions, some of them are obvious, like additional revenue from the doctor. Surgery now for incontinence involves placing a surgical mesh, and that typically costs $25,000. And the typical patient is insured by their...
Sorry to cut you off, Jerrold. It looks like the slides are not visible anymore.
My slides are not visible?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, hold on. In all this time they've not been visible?
It looks like they were on initially, and it passed a few moments.
So when did I lose them?
About 5 or 7 minutes ago. Here.
Well, should I? Let me just quickly. I won't say much, but I'll just show the slides from before. But I need to get to the right model. Yeah, sorry.
And also, Marcy, head of Enclair Therapeutics of Biology, is wondering why the device cannot be kept in longer than 3 months.
Okay, I'll explain that in a second. Okay, sorry.
And no worries, take your time because we have break next, so you can go over your time. It's fine.
All right. Can you see the slides now?
Perfect.
All right. It's not letting me go back. All right. Unfortunately, I can't go backwards. It doesn't seem to be working for that. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Right, just very briefly, the device is in the female urethra and it blocks leaks by shutting its valve. And the reason we replace it is that bacteria that come from the anus up into the urethra, they settle and form a biofilm in the outer third. And when you put a medical device in there, the bacteria migrate and put another biofilm on the device, which then attracts salts from the urine to form little spiky things. So we did a survey of doctors, hospitals, and medical device distributors, and we said, would you prefer to replace this every 3 months, 8 months, or 12 months? And without exception, they all want to replace it every 4 months. And since this is a prescription-only device, it has to get to the patient through the doctor. Then the doctor has to be happy with it, or they're not going to prescribe it. So that's why we go every 4 months. And this just shows it goes in like a catheter. A lot of advantages to the investors, to the economy, and the environment. And this is just some of the figures from the patents that have issued. They started issuing in 2016, about 3 years after we filed them. The European patents took a little bit longer, maybe 7 years to issue. And we just got clearance for the last one. Let's see. I'm going to try hiding this little thing here. Can everybody see the whole screen now, Sam?
Yes, we can see the whole screen.
Okay. So we wanted to test it. There were no animal models, so we had to build an artificial woman's lower urinary tract. And here you can see what a pressure curve looks like and how it spikes when a woman coughs. And we designed a device so that it would close that valve at 100 centimeters of water, even though the cough would continue up here. And then we tested that in a model, found that it actually worked really well. We tested it clinically. We found it worked really well clinically. And we also found the women didn't feel it in place, and they really liked the device. So I'm just going to go through the bottom part of this, which is things that you didn't expect. So investors now are interested in environmental, social, and governance benefits they call ESG. So what we're doing is we're keeping about 8 billion diapers out of landfills to help it to clean up the environment. On the social side, elderly women who can't reach their diapers have to move in with their daughters so the daughters can change their diapers 10 times a day. And after about 2 years, the daughters kind of get tired of changing mom's diaper and they put mom in a nursing home. So the nursing home costs the government $150,000 a year per patient. So in the U.S. alone, that's $300 billion a year of your tax money that's going to pay the patients in nursing homes just because they're incontinent. And so the Floelle device eliminates the diapers, which means that mom and grandma can return back home to be with her kids and her grandchildren and not have to wear a diaper. And we also have a diverse team. We have half women on our team to bring this device to women of the world. So let's take a look at a go-to-market strategy. The first thing you have to do is publish the clinical trial results so that doctors can believe it. Then you do the sales training and go out and talk to doctors and basically educate them on what you have, what it does, what the benefits are to them, what the benefits are to the patient, and the benefits to the environment, etc. Then that takes about 2 years to get all that done. So about 2 years from now, we start with the early adopters. So in the U.S., the early adopter regions are the West Coast, like Oregon, California. They tend to be more open to new ideas, and also areas where incontinence is very prevalent. And that's where women have bad diets and are very obese. And that's in the southern U.S. So we're selling in 2 regions in the U.S. and 2 early adopter regions in Europe, like the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Latvia. Then, sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
There you go. Sorry. So then in the 3rd year, we're starting to sell. In the 4th year, we simply add on 2 more regions in the U.S., 2 more in Europe. And the 5th year, we add on the rest of the regions in the U.S. and the rest of the regions in Europe. So we're selling in 12 regions, each region with 60 million total population. And the milestones look like this. We're doing the early feasibility study now. We'll complete it by August. Then we have to raise money from the angels that would only fund us if we had clinical data. And then we have to get clearance and do the clinical trial. That would take us until about summer of 22. And then, process that data and apply for the de novo 510K clearance here and the CE mark in Europe in November 22. It takes about 8 months to get that through the FDA on average. So maybe 3 or 4 months before we actually expect that approval, we'll hire the team to start pre-selling physicians. That includes clinical trainers, salespeople, regional sales managers, marketing people, etc. So about 2 years from this summer, we'll start sales in the U.S. and Europe. A year later, the other 2 regions. A year later, the remaining regions. And then after a few months, we'll start talking to strategic investors to begin the mergers and acquisition exit process, and then hopefully exit by acquisition in about 5 years from this August. Now, it takes a team, as Ryan pointed out in the previous presentation. So I'm the bioengineer on the team. I have 52 years of experience, and I've worked through the medical school. I've worked in industry now over 30 years. I'm a specialist in getting products to market, and I also do mentoring of CEOs in Europe and India and here. Sherry Grantham is that little 5-year-old who promised her grandma that she would get something on the market, and her grandma actually lived long enough to see us begin the process of doing that. Now we have Judy Isaacson, who I've known for many years and has 35 years of medical marketing experience, and Peter Fuchs, who has both small company experience with Oxbow Carbon and Minerals and big company experience through Smith & Nephew, but he had financial oversight of about 21 international subsidiaries, which were all small companies. We also have an advisor, which is a urologist who's head of a continence center at a local hospital. We've got a genius R&D guy who's now in Israel. We've got a fellow who's got tons of experience in selling in Europe, Latin America, and Japan. And we've got an expert in manufacturing, Mike Chester. And these are all people I've known for many years, not just some newbie that we hired to do this project. So why would anybody invest in our device? Well, first of all, investors are always looking for a minimum of 80% gross profit, and we have that. People also like to have a social effect, and by getting rid of diapers, that will make women happier. I want to know, is your regulatory path defined? It's very well defined. De novo 510K in the U.S., Class 2B in Europe. Is it reimbursed? One of the biggest challenges for new devices is that you have to get your own CPT code and then go ahead and try to get reimbursement. But we're already using existing CPT codes and existing reimbursements. That's not a challenge. The final thing I want to know is, do you have a team that is experienced enough to get this device to market? We have an amazing A-team, experienced with devices, working with incontinent women, with startups. We're ready to go, and have been going actually for some time. Let's look at the patient. Well, the patient saves time and money. No more changing diapers 10 times a day. No more spending money on diapers and cream for the skin and extra clothing and dry cleaning. Doesn't have to worry all the time about smelling like a nursing home. So we essentially restore her personal dignity. You also eliminate the embarrassment that comes with incontinence, so she has more confidence, and also it's more convenient to go to the doctor once in 4 months for, say, an hour versus spending 40 hours changing diapers over that period of time. We're destigmatizing incontinence and we're demystifying female incontinence. So many benefits to the patient. What's the competition look like? Well, first of all, we're not new. That the device is new, but incontinence is 4,000 years old. And originally was treated in Egypt by using the same papyrus that they use for writing to make incontinence pads. So a lot of things have been developed. We've got them arranged here. And you can see the Floelle device not only works well and is convenient to a woman's lifestyle, it's also comfortable. And it's lower priced than other competing things like washable panties, continence pads. They now have special briefs. Some company had the idea of putting adhesive tape in the vulva to block the urethra. Not exactly comfortable to pull that tape off. And then there are ideas of pessaries. Some of them are low cost like this. Some of them are the Impressa, which look like tampons, but they're not cheap. Recently, a company came up with a tilt sensor in the vagina. It doesn't measure the voltage of the muscle. It doesn't measure the pressure the muscle exerts. It just measures if the vagina tilts when the woman contracts the pelvic floor. And it's available. We don't know if it's very effective yet because I think the clinical trials are still ongoing. And we have pelvic floor muscle exercise. Again, this was invented in the year 80 by the Han Dynasty in China and then reinvented by Dr. Arnold Kegel in about 1946. So there are various devices like this one where you can do pelvic muscle exercise and squeeze on a pressure sensor and see some results on a screen. And then back 300 years ago, a guy named Galvani put electrical current through a frog's muscle and found the muscle twitched. And so they have various electrical stimulators that go in the vagina and put 50 volts on the vagina and electrocute it. They pass electric current through it. And finally, there's just wearing a catheter and leg bag. Catheters are not too comfortable, and leg bags slosh around as urine goes back and forth while you're walking. Not the greatest thing, but they do collect urine okay. Now, investors always want to know financials. So this is 5 years, starting with the year one after we get funded. And since we're pre-revenue, have no FDA clearance, can't sell anything until we get FDA clearance. So no revenue the first 2 years. And then we did a very conservative model of a salesman's performance, how many doctors they see in a day, in a week, what percentage of doctors they close the sale on, et cetera, et cetera. And using that model, we built up from the ground up a revenue model that shows that in our first year of sales, we would sell about $51 million worth of gross sales. In the second year, about roughly $200 million. In the third year, we're selling a little over $400 million. So we're doing quite well in this market. And again, it's because we're not only selling back to the same market, we're growing the market. So the number of regions is 4 that first year, it doubles in the next year, and then adds on more later. And the investors want to know what's your margin. And they like an 80% gross margin to fund a company. And we're at that 81% margin. So we think that in terms of investors and financials, we're doing well and we'd be attractive for investment. And the investment we're looking for is 1.1 million tranche right now to get us through that clinical trial and get through the FDA. And then while the pivotal trial data is being reviewed by the FDA, we'd like to hire a team of sales managers, clinical staff, marketing people, and use that to train the distributor salespeople and call on doctors, do ride-alongs, so that doctors can be fully informed and trained to use this device before it's actually for sale. And then when we start selling, we'll probably just borrow against receivables about $2 million to build product and fill warehouses with the product and pay for travel, etc. And then in 25, we'd exit through a strategic investor. So we could grow the annual sales to about $414 million. And we'll see that when investors look at something, they like to acquire it. And they usually acquire it at a median price of 3.3 times previous year's sales. So I'll let you figure out what 3.3 times 413 million is. and will hopefully generate a calculated but not guaranteed double-digit return on investment to accredited investors. We've talked to investors, and as usual, they want to see everything done before they invest. They want to see FDA clearance. So that's going to come after we have sales. I really enjoyed talking to you. I'd just like to highlight that not only are we doing great things for investors, but we're saving you tax money by saving the revenue from nursing homes. We're cleaning up the environment by getting diapers out of the environment. We're socially benefiting elderly women by bringing them home from nursing homes to be with their families. And we're helping all these women. Millions and millions of women across the globe will be helped by the Floelle device. So please help us. Help us get funding. If you know an investor that cares about women, please have them contact us. My email address is here, shapirofloelle.com. And to end our story, Sherry's grandmother was very happy when she learned that Sherry had finally come up with a product that would take care of the elderly people in the nursing home and keep them out of diapers. Thank you very much for your attention. I'd be happy to take questions. Sam, you're muted.
Of course. Thank you so much. It was a very insightful presentation. I really like the slide where you showed the timeline to 2022, 2024, 2025. And I think there was one question from Marcy from Enclair Therapies. She's wondering why the device cannot be kept in longer than 3 months.
Well, like I said, that's more of a marketing decision. That the antimicrobial we used has a silver ions inside of a crystal, and you can put more or less silver inside the crystal. So when we started out, we found that we could put enough in there to last 14 months.
Right.
But then we did a survey of doctors, and we said, would you like to have this last 4, 8, or 12 months? And all of them wanted 4 months. So since they're the prescribers, if they're not happy, then it's not going to get prescribed for